HVAC failure. So I've seen this a couple of times in my time in broadcast. I think it probably happens a little more than we think it does. One very recently. So we have an apparatus room. It has the normal power, equipment, and environmental type devices within it. And what has happened is our AC, our aircon, has gone. It's failed. But these are unmanned rooms. These are just server rooms or apparatus rooms. People aren't there all the time necessarily. So then what happens is that room starts to heat up. It's got lots of equipment with lots of processing power, churning away and getting hotter and hotter. And ultimately, that results in loss of signal. In at least one of the cases that I know of, that broadcaster had to essentially throw away all the equipment in the apparatus room that this happened to and replace it because environmental thermal load was much higher than the specifications given by any manufacturer. So the warranties were therefore void. So they ended up having to replace all of the equipment in those apparatus rooms, which is obviously very costly, but also they lost signal. So how would this have looked in an Insite installation? Well, we have our power equipment and environmental. We're constantly monitoring with Insite and logging in our database. And we have real-time dashboards showing our engineers the status of everything that's happening in our facilities and maybe remote facilities. We have alarming that's there ready. So we've already got eyes on what's happening in our building. So our environmental fails. And then Insite is then alerted. Now, it could either be alerted depending on the setup, but if the AC has failed, but its controller is still active, then that can send us an SMMP trap straight away to alert Insite. Or equally, we can set up Insite to be monitoring the presence of that controller. And if that controller dies and goes offline, then we can equally use that information to generate alerts as we need to. So the AC has gone down, Insite has been alerted, it's logged it in its database. So instantly we get a real-time readout in dashboards. So on a screen in our engineering or master control or wherever it's relevant, we can actually start seeing visual alarms as they happen. Then we actually get alarms, triggered alarms, which can then send out SMS messages and emails to the correct engineering staff to alert them that an issue has occurred that needs instant looking into. And then finally, it's logged this into a report. So as a retrospective, we'll be able to see exactly what time, the date this error occurred, and then monitor the things that happen around that when this failure has occurred. So at this point, then the apparatus room starts to heat up. But we've already got guys who are looking at it. These guys have been alerted. They have been informed. They can go in and try and get the aircon working, or at least try and make arrangements to take that transmission data, the audio, video, and whatever is feeding that transmission away from this apparatus room so you can keep you on air. But also at the same time, we can be monitoring the temperature. As I said, our PDUs include temperature and humidity monitoring. So we can keep an eye on that apparatus room to see how hot it's actually getting. And actually, we can use that as a second trigger state. So if for any reason we get a false positive coming from the environmental state, then we've got a backup in terms of this apparatus room is actually getting very hot and we need to do something. And again, we can then trigger the dashboards, the alarms, the messages, and log it as part of the report. And then lastly, we can add in control functionality. So if we have control panels available to the engineers who may be 7 floors up, they may be in a different facility, they may be down the road. They can actually start doing some power shedding to reduce the processing load. So they can actually set up a salvo that turns off all the outlets for non-essential equipment. So you're not generating more heat than you actually need to give the essential equipment much more of a chance to keep running under this abnormal situation. And again, all of this is being logged into the database. Everything that happens is then reported as and when it needs to, so it can be inspected later on.